All right, welcome to Bereans at the Gate. This is our video blog for February 7, 2018. Maybe not as momentous of a news week as we've had previously, but certainly much to talk about. Let's talk about the memo, the infamous memo release, or do we call it Memo Gate? I don't know what we call it right now, that we've seen in Congress recently. Do you guys have any thoughts? Do you think the Republicans, let's start with the Republicans, have they overstepped their bounds or have they threatened national security? Those are sort of the arguments that we've heard against the memo, at least from a very practical sense. What do you guys think?
Well, let me touch on the latter argument first, and I addressed it in the blog post I put up earlier this week. The idea that somehow that's going to compromise sources and methods, that's been pretty much refuted by anybody, and the Democrats are not talking that anymore. That was the warning why you can't release it, but none of them are saying that this is something that is going to do that. So they've gone to, well, it just doesn't matter. That seems to be the general tenor now of the rebukes.
Yeah, I'd like to see all the documentation. Behind all of this. The memos are simply summaries. Republican and then the Democrats want to put theirs out. We'll see whether the president, he'll approve it, I think, the Democrat version.
Although there's a rumor that the Democratic version has a lot of sensitive material in it that might force him to decline releasing it, which would then be a black eye for the White House. So,
do you think that might have been their intent?
I think it would be deliberate.
Their intent,
Yes, that's a rumor. So
I just don't think the memos tell me enough to make any difference. And it's always going to be selective in some sense. Even if it's not intended to be selective, it's still selective.
Right.
So I would like to see all the documentary evidence, if possible.
But you can. I mean, there are classification issues, at the underlying documents. So at some level, there's an aggregation of the results that we have to look at, and you have to have trust. I think. I don't know how you deal with it, though. I think at least the Democrats out there. I mean, because already I did at least see, and I don't know whether you all saw that on National Review, the one gentleman said that they've seen the Democratic response, and it's underwhelming is kind of what they're saying.
I saw that
so
too.
We can at least say, okay, well, the Republicans have some substantial issues, if true. And then the question would be, does a Democrat kind of refute
have any rebuttal to that?
I mean, or does it just change the subject, and is it strong? I mean, I think we can know more.
I think we can know more. I think we should know more. As I think it's our right to know more. I favor more transparency as much as possible.
Our right. Interesting.
Yes, I like that word, right.
Did I miss that transparency amendment to the Constitution? Or
it's a moral right.
A moral right. Okay. The refuge of the scoundrel. He's off the text, ladies and gentlemen. It is interesting. I think the Nunes memo was actually pretty underwhelming itself. I don't think it really pointed to a whole lot. I mean, even if we substantiate it, it really is only looking at a couple of potentially bad actors. And without knowing the context of the FISA application itself, I'm not sure we really know how important the dossier was and all those things. And so I wouldn't dismiss it, but it didn't seem like an explosive thing or really a bombshell to me. Perhaps you might say there are a couple people in the FBI who have a partisan axe to grind. That, to me, that doesn't discredit the entire institution, doesn't discredit the Mueller investigation. So I don't know.
The FISA
all these memos are flying from a partisan perspective, which is really what we have to keep in mind.
That's right. Even if they are accurate, we don't know that they're accurate.
No, we don't. We don't.
True.
Right. So.
Well, I think that we have to be careful about joining in the idea that this is somehow broad-based, discrediting the FBI. None of the Republicans, to my knowledge, are saying that the FBI in toto is a problem. That is what the Democrats are asserting this action on the Republicans does lead to.
The office holders are not saying that. That's true. There are some of the commentariat and talk show people who are sort of, let's clean out the FBI. It's part of the swamp now.
Well,
I think that's a little excessive.
Mr. Strzok,
I want to make a comment on that.
Again, even if we have one or two bad actors in an institution, that's just one or two bad actors.
The top level of any agency consists of political appointees. Political appointees have a tendency to be biased in favor of the particular president who appoints them or the particular affiliations they have. And so I think there's some reason to be skeptical about those top level officials in any situation. Unless I know them personally, and I don't know any of them personally, so I have to reserve judgment, be skeptical.
I have one other question. This is for Jeff. You're probably, of amongst us, I think you're probably the only one that's handled classified material. Does the government tend to over-classify material?
Absolutely.
And so how much of that is driving this? I agree with Mark, actually. There should be more transparency. But
well, I will say this. The HPSC is going to be dealing with a lot more sensitive information than would be just the general thing is they're going to make things secret that are probably littered throughout any newspaper in the country. That's the general more thing. Very, very seldom would you ever have a situation where something is labeled as SCI or sensitive compartment information that is widely available. Now, it may be known by the bad guys.
Right.
It may not actually compromise things. And that's why I've been so kind of hostile towards the Democrats on this particular issue. And I go back to Mrs. Clinton, you know, and we've talked about it offline a little bit. Some of the documents that were in those emails were code word levels. And I know what kinds of things, that is really, really important stuff that was out there. And there was seemingly no care there. That's why I have some concern. If I would have been still in the Air Force with that, I would have been court-martialed for doing what she did.
Well, she violated the statute, clearly.
So the idea that it's not a problem, but we're really concerned about it here, it just drives me a little bit crazy, having been into that system. Because I know a number of people that had their careers ended because of mishandling with lesser offenses than what she did. So
I can see that. All right, moving on. Let's get to the stock market. The topsy-turvy roller coaster ride that seems to be the stock market these days. Bert, how do people who aren't experts in the stock market or experts in sort of these kinds of financial issues, how should we interpret the market and its up and down?
I would not be worried at all. The underlying fundamentals in our economy appear to be very strong. And if you look at the yield on 10-year treasuries, they've been creeping up since September. You know, interest rates are starting to move back into a more normal kind of range. So, you know, what's happened in the last couple of days with the record-breaking gyrations, I think the reason that we're not hearing more about it on the news is because the economy itself appears to be strong, and because of that, there's not a great deal of worry, except perhaps in you know, the land where some of the people are actually doing the trading. So, I mean, so if you were really doing this on a day-to-day basis, you would, I'm sure, would be concerned about what was going on.
Jeff, is this kind of normal to see this sort of fluctuation at all? I mean, they've been large drops, but
not percentage-wise.
But not in percentage-wise, and that's a really important kind of thing. What's I agree, but I would take a little bit different perspective than Bert perhaps, because it is not that the underlying economy. He's absolutely right. I think is very strong, but that's precisely what everybody's concerned about. If we resume to normalcy on interest rates, just any valuation of any asset has got to be discounted by the kind of the future income that we'd say future cash flows. And as interest rates rise, that's going to drive the valuations down. That's what everybody's, I think, more concerned about. And at the kind of valuation metrics that people normally apply to any assets, the stock market is on the very rich side of valuation, such that higher interest rates would suggest if we're going to go back to normal, stock market could be much lower. You know, that doesn't mean anything about the underlying economy, and I think you're absolutely right. I would say that it's always the case. If you needed your money next year, you should be very concerned, but you shouldn't be in the market if you need your money next year. If you're talking about a longer time horizon, then it's you should ride it out. I mean, because you're a long-term investor. But there's no doubt that we have been on the high side of historical valuation metrics for about a decade now. And I would argue still that's principally due to the easy monetary policies of not just the Federal Reserve, but the Bank of Japan, the ECB, et cetera. And we're starting to see, not just the U.S., but starting to see pickup across the globe, which I think that's the concern, is the global liquidity going to be ending? And if that's been the source of the market being so high, is it going to come down? I think that's what people are asking.
You think it has to come down?
I
just naturally, I'd say.
I would say that if we go back to normal interest rates, then you're going to see the stock market lower relative to what it is today at some point. Now, the other aspect, and I talked about this briefly on the blog post, the market had gone an immense number of days, and I forget the exact number, but I want to say it was something like 500 days since even a 5% movement. That's historically very rare, and I do know that the volatility index had been very quiescent. And so markets bull markets, as we say, like to climb a wall of worry. And so when there's no worry, they need to bleed off excessive greed. And we hadn't had that for a long time. And I think that's all. So this is normal. It is very normal to have volatility. The numeric part is just because of the high valuation of the market.
What do you guys think of Donald Trump out there claiming credit when the market goes up, of course ignoring the issue and the market goes down? What do you think of the the politics of it on the one hand, but the propriety of it on another. I mean, Bert, do you think a president should be out there saying, "Look what I'm doing. The stock market's responding to it"?
Well, all presidents seem to do it to one extent or another.
Yeah.
Should they really do it? Probably not. I don't know if it has a big effect one way or the other. I don't think that the president, short of some major conflagration happening that he is involved with, that might affect the global economy. So if something on the Korean Peninsula kicks up,
Sure.
something of that nature, the president could be very much involved. But normally, no, I don't think the president's that important, and I think it's politics.
Yeah, I agree. Any president who's not going to use this has taken something important out of his toolbox
Sure.
politically.
Yeah.
He's got to use it.
Yeah.
Even though I think we all know that he is not alone responsible. Not alone, but not to say he's done nothing to make the conditions better for the market to be better. I wouldn't say that.
I think undoubtedly the direction that the administration is going has helped the market, has helped the economy. I don't. So in that sense, I just personally don't.
You wouldn't give him too much credit.
I don't give Trump personally as much credit as I possibly could. I like the individual.
Or he's
people
required to.
that he's appointed, and I think in that sense he is responsible.
Yeah.
I think that, as usual, I think you guys are all correct. Presidents take more credit than they should, and they usually get more blame than they should vis-a-vis the economy. And I don't think it's very smart on his part, especially since he's such a lightning rod. He should just keep his mouth shut and lay low. That said, I think you can give him some specific kudos for both the tax bill as well as, and I think more importantly, the regulatory agenda, which means that you should expect to see higher growth levels because of that, and that would be reflected in higher earnings of the companies in the future. So there's some reason to say that his policies have been, as you just said, are beneficial to the market. That being said, I think those positives are dwarfed by, I still believe, I'm going to be stuck with my story because I like it, is that the monetary effects are overwhelming these other aspects. But given a certain monetary policy, his policies have ramped up.
Let me ask you this question. Do you think his rhetoric about protectionism could have an effect?
Oh, absolutely. Well, his rhetoric to some degree. The real question is reality.
I know.
So I sit back and I say, is there any way that we can appeal to his vanity and just give him some sort of token protectionist thing to do without him causing much
really
real harm, such that these other things which are positive, that would just be okay. That's the deal that I kind of alluded to several weeks ago. Can the Republicans in the Congress say, look, we know you've made this big pitch against free trade. We'll let you do this small thing. But if you do any more, we're going to hold hostage the rest of your agenda. The I wrote about it. I was very disappointed when Grassley rolled him on an issue on ethanol. Mm-hmm. So he can be rolled if they stood up to him. And that's what I would like to see.
No, I agree. Reality is the important thing, and will he push it with Congress, and how will they respond?
All right, let's tackle our last topic here, SpaceX, Elon Musk and his exploits in space. First of all, for our viewers, what exactly did we see recently with SpaceX, and why is it a big deal?
Well, I as many of these guys know, I used to be in the rocket business when I was in the Air Force and was involved with SpaceX, helping them do their initial launch efforts, both at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and actually sent a lieutenant out to Kwajalein when they tried their first launch to help with that. So I've been around SpaceX for a while. Likewise, many of my friends still work with them, those that stayed working with them. He's hired a number of Air Force officers to be a part of that team. So I've paid attention because of that kind of professional interest. And then as an economist, I've written, and you've seen on the blog, about my concerns over kind of all his business line, which is really to appeal to the government to be a big funder of his business ventures. So that's concerning. That said, kudos to Mr. Musk and the SpaceX team, because they continue to succeed. And the most recent rocket is the largest that's ever been launched. And and they're advertising that the starting cost would be like $90 million. That potential cost driver is going to be huge in what we can do in space. And space still has some hugely competitive and commercial advantages if you can get the cost of access to space a lot cheaper.
Compare
Go ahead.
that. Compare that with the space program's rockets. The
Yeah,
cost of
yeah.
those.
So and I've been out for a while, but for instance, when we were real concerned in the Air Force, the Titan IV, which was a big deal, was $400 million. This is a more powerful rocket. This is it's almost 20 years later than the Titan IV, and yet it's $90 million. So the
pretty good comparison.
Are very good. So the point that I would say is, even though he's got some cronyism in there, it's paid off to some degree, and we may yet get some benefits. That doesn't mean we should have funded the guy for a lot of that, because we don't know what those dollars would have done in the other parts of the economy if we wouldn't have funded his cronyism. Nevertheless, we've got a pretty good rocket here. So looks good.
It's got some
Congrats
benefits.
to the SpaceX team.
And not all government spending is created equally.
No,
right? I mean,
true.
I'm a little more sympathetic to government spending that leads to something like this, at least for me. So
could well
I'm sure
be.
many of our viewers are as well. So anyway, I think that does it for us today. Thank you for watching. As always, keep your questions coming. We've actually been talking about some of these questions, and so we will address them at some point in future video blogs. Thank you.